and welcome to the viewers with British Eurosport this afternoon as we pick up live coverage of the fourth stage of Tirreno-Adriatico Indicatore to Città, 244 kilometres, 4 riders up front from the original 6-man breakaway. And that had a maximum advantage at one stage of 7 minutes and 20 seconds, but Maxim Belkov, king of the long breakaways and making them last all the way to the finish from the Giro d'Italia last year, well, the Movistar team, Omega Pharma Quick-Step and others are well aware of his abilities, and also quite keen, I suspect, to put a little bit of pressure on the Omega Pharma Quick-Step team as they approach the finish of what's going to be the toughest day of racing in this entire Tirreno-Adriatico. 244 kilometres of racing, 3 classified climbs, plenty of other steep hills along the way for the likes of Peter Sagan, Mikhail Kwiatkowski et al. To endure, and who will be able to last all the way to the top of the final climb. My name is Declan Quigley. I'm joined by Matt Stevens alongside to survey the action, and Matt, this really is a doozy of a stage. Not only is it tough in terms of the profile, but it's a long stage.
Yeah, for this time of year, it is a very, very long stage. A really flat start, and then midway through, we had a couple of King of the Mountains climbs, really significant, difficult climbs. But as you say, Declan, we've got an extremely difficult finale, a 14-kilometre climb up to the Città Selva Rotonda, which is really going to set the cat amongst the pigeons amongst the main general classification contenders. But as Alberto Contador has stated, at this time of the year, we're still relatively early into the season. To be racing 244 kilometres is a big ask. So it's not just that wall at the end of the race. It's the fatigue that's going to set into the legs over such a difficult stage. And of course, they've been racing hard for a few days already. So although these pros are used to racing very, very long distances, they'll have looked at that the route map today and thought, this is going to be a very interesting one. So all the main GC protagonists will be making sure that they're rested, looked after by their domestics within the teams, and trying to get over the vast majority of the day without too much trouble, without spending too much energy, and then it's basically up to the guys from the bottom of the final climb to see what they can do. But yeah, fatigue is definitely going to play a big part today, and it'll be interesting to see who's come out of the winter with the best all-round preparation. A lovely view there.
The Movistar team on the front are setting the agenda. Of course, they have Nairo Quintana is their main GC contender, and they believe that they can project him into a decent position. The Tinkoff Saxo team will be looking to try and propel Alberto Contador, sitting 36 seconds back at the moment, and here's one of his most important helpers, Nicholas Roach. An injury-truncated winter preparation, had a few knee problems, so Roach doesn't have any personal ambition for this race. He'll be looking after Contador and Kreuziger, Contador in particular, I believe. Kreuziger now 44 seconds in arrears, Contador 36 seconds back. It's all gone absolutely perfectly for the race leader, Mikhail Kwiatkowski, wearing the blue jersey of race leader today, having handed over the white jersey to Luke Durbridge. So leading 2 classifications, Kwiatkowski, and at just 23 years of age, having finished 4th in this race 1 year ago, Kwiatkowski is a coming man of this sport, and many people believe that he can go all the way. Well, this is a big, big test for him, because he's certainly a man for the classics, but is he a man that can endure this sort of these big climbs? And it looks as if Matt, they're going to try and put him under a lot of pressure as early as possible.
Definitely. I mean, over these first few climbs, I mean, it's interesting to see the gap has already come down. It was quite significant. It went up to over 6 minutes, and now the gap, with still 50 kilometres to go, has come down to 2 minutes. You'll see in some of the Grand Tours, they'll wait until the last climb to reel in vast amounts of time, but you can tell the bunch is under quite a lot of pressure. Movistar doing the pace setting at the moment. They don't want to give Kwiatkowski an armchair ride to the finish. They want to make sure, without disposing of too many of their own team, they just want to make sure it's an uncomfortable ride to the bottom of the climb, which would suit Quintana, because the last thing you want to do, they know Kwiatkowski is the man on form, so they want to make it as difficult as possible and set a very high tempo.
It's a problem for Belkov, perhaps. It's certainly a Katusha rider. No, it's one of his teammates. That is Caruso, Gianpaolo Caruso, who is in the bunch and just picks up a wheel and back into the action. Riders working their way back on after that after that last climb, the Capistrello.
Matthias Brandl there showing a nice unorthodox descending method. Definitely a case of don't do this at home, but trying to get as aerodynamic as possible, save as much energy on some of these descents, especially some of the more gradual descents. Some of these descents you can freewheel down and try and have a little bit of a rest, and some of them you have to pedal down. As you see, you can really get some acceleration out of those hairpins. As you can see by the gaps here, they're not letting up the pressure on the descent. A lot of these more gradual descents with the slightly less steep gradients, you can actually pedal down using your top gear. They'll be spinning down these descents using a 53 tooth at the front, 11 at the back, and as you can see, all the riders extremely skillful, but at making sure they leave a couple of bike lengths so they can give room to manoeuvre and adjust should somebody in front of them come to grief.
So we've got 4 riders up front from the original 6-man breakaway. Lloyd Mondary is there for AG Tour Le Mondial. Alexei Lutsenko, Kazakhstan, with the Astana team. Matthias Brandl, the Austrian with the IAM squad, is in there, and so too Maxim Belkov, the Katusha rider, Russian, who took a stage of the Giro d'Italia 12 months ago. And they've managed to distance 2 early breakaway companions. Alexander Pichot, the Europcar rider, has been dispensed with, so too Filippo Fortin, Bardiani Valvole rider, who actually led over the first of 3 classified climbs. We've had the Forca di Cerro, the Forca Capistrello came after that, and we're looking forward to the Città Reale, but there are a couple of lumps and bumps before they actually get to that finishing climb. That final climb of the day starts with 14 kilometers to go and runs all the way to the summit. 10% maximum, 5.3% average, but don't let that average fool you, because there's a couple of little flat sections. It ramps up in quite steep bursts all the way to the finish line. It really, really is a testing finish.
Yeah, they're on a bit of a false flat now. It drags up for a while before dipping down and climbing again. Then they do have a reasonable descent of about 8 kilometers before a bit of a false flat again, before they begin the 14-kilometer ascent up to the Città Reale, Selva Rotonda. Small population at the Città Reale of 484 people at last count.
Might be a bit higher today.
Yeah, there are definitely a few fans up there. We've already seen a few club riders and getting a nice spot on the side of the hill. And obviously it's wonderful that it's such a clear day, because last year in the Giro and in Tirreno we had some awfully cold conditions that affected the TV coverage. But of course it's great. We've got clear, crystal clear skies for these guys, topping up their tans, and of course it's great for the fans as we flip back to Movistar, who really are driving the pace at the front. 6 riders there, really setting quite a high tempo. Clearly we know what we're doing this for. Looking at teeing up their superstar climber Nairo Quintana, who must have indicated he's on good form. But this will be good for guys like Contador, so he doesn't have to waste any of his team, so those teams can sit back. And it's interesting that Amiga Pharma Quickstep aren't riding, but they don't really need to. You know, it's they're in the driving seat. Kwiatkowski's got a nice cushion, and of course he's got Rigoberto Urán just behind him as well. So they are in a really, really strong position.
That's 2 obviously GC contenders, very strong riders. 1-2 on general classification at the moment, the Omega Pharma Quick Steps, 10 seconds between Kwiatkowski and Rigoberto Urán. Next up, Simon Clark of Orica Green Edge. With the best will in the world, the expectation isn't that Clark will be there at the end of this long summit climb to the finish, although it'd certainly be love to be proved wrong on that one. Tony Martin sitting 4th overall, 15 seconds behind. Darrell Impey there for Orica Green Edge as well, 17 seconds back, and Peter Sagan 22 seconds behind, the first of the big threats, you might say, to the Omega Pharma Quick Step hegemony. And Sagan, yeah, 22 seconds. He's got to find a way to close that gap and also find a way to hang on. So it's a difficult situation for the Cannondale man. Difficult situation too for Nairo Quintana. But who are the helpers for Omega Pharma Quickstep that can keep Rigoberto Urán and Kwiatkowski, set the tempo for them, look after them a bit? I mean, and be there towards the finish. Do they have anyone that isn't classics oriented?
Yeah,
towards the stage races.
They've got a pretty balanced team. Wout Poels last year, when riding for Vacances Soleil, finished quite strongly on one of the Queen stages, was top 10, got 8th. Wout Poels is a very capable climber, long, rangy rider. He's good at time trialing, on all-round rouleur, but can pull it out on the climbs. Whether he's in the sort of condition that he can, give any assistance to his 2 joint team leaders, on the final climb remains to be seen. But of course, you know, sometimes we do see, you know, Tony Martin pulling out all the stops, and he can ride well at the foot of a climb for the first few kilometres, setting a really, really high tempo. But at the moment, you know, as we see, you can just see Bradley Wiggins in one of the back groups there that have been distanced, looking like they're just about to join the back of the convoy and possibly get on.
2 minutes advantage for the peloton up front, and these riders, though, at the back and desperately trying to claw themselves back onto the back of the group. Now, looks like Cadel Evans. Is that Cadel Evans? Could well be in trouble, and he's off the back of the bunch. So Cadel Evans of the BMC squad, well, they've had such a difficult start to this race. Not a good situation for Cadel Evans to be in, and this is a surprise. Looks like he's arrived in Tirreno-Adriatico with a lot less decent form than you might have expected. So just under 2 minutes advantage for the 4 riders up front. Stage 4 of Tirreno-Adriatico, Indicatore in Arezzo to Cittadella, and the climb of Selva Rotonda. 244 kilometers in total for the riders. We're down to the final 45 and a bit. And these 4 riders out front have been out front since kilometer 0, so you can be sure those legs are starting to feel a little bit tender for Lloyd Monderi of AG Tuorlo Mondial, Alexei Lutsenko of Astana, Matthias Brandl of IAM, and Maxim Belkov of Katusha. Just over a minute and a half advantage. These riders were up front by a total of 7 minutes and 20 seconds at one stage, but Movistar have really lit the blue touch paper, and they're absolutely flying at the moment.
Definitely. They're
Johan van Summeren at the back.
No sticky bottle there, grabbing the bottle, and it's amazing how many bottles you can actually get into a jersey. I mean, I remember back in the day, I think my personal best was 9. I think as you see him loading, I mean, he's a big rider, he's nice and rangy, so he's going to have a bit more room in his the back of his jacket, top more than Cav Frick's on. But no, you can get 9 bottles in, 3 in your pockets, a couple up the front, and about 4 down the back. But there's a famous time in the Giro, I dropped back to get some bottles, and the bunch was lined out a little bit like this, and it took me nearly 15 minutes to ride my way back up to the bunch to feed the riders who were actually, you know, right near the front, and just as we entered the feed zone. So I just had to jettison the 8 bottles that I'd got because the soigneurs were at the side of the road. So, but it's really hard, you know, if you imagine each bottle weighs approximately 1 kilogram, you're putting it, you know, it's all about timing as well. If you know the parcours a little bit, you'll know, or you can just look ahead and sense where there might be a bit of a downhill stretch. That's when to get the bottles on, not at the foot of a climb, because you're having to ride faster than the front of the peloton with an added 9 kilograms of weight, plus the fact it's swinging all over the place, affecting your centre of balance. It's a fine art, yeah, definitely, it's a fine art.
So look at the work that the Movistar team are doing. They've got Kopecky and also Castrovieja on the front, and other troops, other reinforcements ready to add their weight to the chase, or to the chase of the break. But really what these riders are doing are putting the hurt on the other general classification contenders in the group. It's not just about chasing down those riders up front. In fact, I don't think they're hugely worried about them. The anticipation is that they'll have, the way things are going, they'll have caught them well before the bottom of the final climb. Now this one is really about drilling it and making it tough for everyone else.
Over the kind of length of this race is, as we said before, 244k is a long way. It's hard just to ride at, you know, an easy tempo, but if they can keep the pace high, it just makes it very, very uncomfortable. It also it's just going to make the legs ache, and it's sitting in a line out. Obviously, you notice even on this flatter section of road, the bunch isn't bunched across the road and fanned across the road. It's in a pretty much one line, and that is uncomfortable. Regardless of the amount of talent you have, it's very uncomfortable, and Movistar have got one objective, and that's to make it as difficult as they can for anybody who has a view of trying to attack Quintana. And Quintana must be feeling good, otherwise the team wouldn't be doing this. The situation can change on the road, as we see Andre Amador taking some bottles.
Well, he's going well. He's going back for bottles while his team are drilling it on the front. Fair play to Amador. Genia is at the back for Frances de Jeu, and look as if he's enjoying himself too much. There's aren't many huge fans of Movistar in the group. I suppose if you're new to cycling and watching it, the question is, well, why don't the Movistar team attack? Why don't they actually try and get away from the group?
Yeah, it's when you look at it and you're coming in, you're not, you know, fully appraised or understanding of the way cycle racing work. It can look a little bit odd, but it's just about protecting and getting their team leader to a point on the course that's going to suit his physical attributes, and that could be whether it's getting a sprinter to the finish or getting a mountain climber to the bottom of a particular hill. And in this case, it's up to the Tirreno-Adriatico. So it's all about this team setting a high tempo, not needing to attack, but protecting their team leader and to a strategically important part of the race. As we see, Belkov being distanced by the breakaway. I think this road does look flat, but I think it's ever so slightly uphill, and I think his legs have just given out. There was no attacks there. That was purely fatigue had set in. They'd been away from kilometre 0 today, so he's got about 190 Ks in the legs, 50 kilometres approximately of which he'd spent on the front. So a big day out for him, and I think his legs have just given up the ghost.
Well, still 42.5 kilometres to go, and 14 of them are up the side of a wall, so it's a tough day in the saddle for these riders. There's another look at the profile. 3 categorised climbs, the Forcadicero, Capistrello, and that finishing climb up to Selva-Rotondo. But the likes of the well, those climbs in between Forca Capistrello and the final climb, they're pretty arduous indeed. Well, quick reminder, we're on Twitter at DQ Sport, at Real Stevens, hashtag Eurosport Cycling. Those are the key statistics you need to have. Thanks for your comments from at Pinarello and at Kazani. At Niall Quinn wants to know, he's looking to buy a carbon road frame for decent money. Recommend anything? Well, I know Matt Stevens is selling a Specialised at the moment, so give him a shout.
Steady on. No, I think the best thing to say, without favouring any of the brands, once you start paying, a reasonable amount of money for frames, there's only marginal differences, and they're Pinarello's are great, Specialized are great. Obviously, Trek's are very good bikes. You've got the German brand Focus as well out there. Lots and lots of brands. I'm not expressing any particular preference at all. And there's a Scott. Most of the top-end brands are. It's what you want it for. You could have if you wanted to ride a lot of flat races and looking at speed, go for one of the brands that offers an aero option. You know, you're not riding a low profile, you're not riding a bike that's lighter and stiffer for the mountains, but you're riding one that's got a different profile of frame, more geared towards aerodynamics. Generally, those frames are slightly heavier than the lighter frames that Contador would ride, for example. So Specialized would ride 2 frames in this race. They'd ride the SL4 S-Works Tarmac, which is basically more of a standard frame, and then they have the Venge, which is a more aerodynamic frame and is slightly heavier. So there's lots and lots of options out there. Best thing to do is click on the websites and have a look at the spec and take your pick.
So 1 minute 19 seconds advantage for the 3 riders, not too concerned. Movistar on the front of the bunch, doing the legwork, trying to chase down those attackers out front. 4 riders up front. Peter Sagan just sitting behind the Movistar team. Sagan with the green Cannondale shorts, but the red of leader of the points classification. As we run through Leonessa, not too much interest from the breakaway riders in that intermediate sprint point, with Matthias Brandl of the IM squad just rolling through on the front. As we see Nairo Quintana at the back of the Movistar train, watching as his teammates toil in the spring sunshine, heading towards Città at the end of stage 4 of Tirreno-Adriatico. On the front, the big, tall, rangy figure of Eros Kopecky, the Italian, riding with the Spanish-based squad.
Yeah, great lineup of riders that Quintana has at his disposal. The full lineup of the Movistar team: Andre Amador, Igor Anton, Eros Kopecky, Jonathan Castroviejo. Obviously the Brit Alex Dowsett, who rode so strongly the other day, and then Bernard Inchowski, and finished off by Adriano Malori, a very strong time trialist / ruler, who can ride for long periods of time on the front. Pretty fearless team there, very strong in depth, and used to riding on the front to protect their little climber. A few moments ago was filling his face with gels and bits of cake and energy bars to make sure that he's fully fueled up for the finale. The big danger of a race of this length, of course, is forgetting to eat. And once you've forgotten to eat enough, or even if you start to feel thirsty, with the way the body works, generally, if you feel thirsty, you're already dehydrated, things are too late. So it's all about eating little and often, especially before the final climb, because these guys don't want, although they'll be sipping drinks on the final climb, they don't want to be getting anything heavy in the stomachs. It's all about eating in good time. So, and they'll be eating foods that can be digested easily. So simple carbohydrates, bits of cake, and maybe even towards the end, things are a bit more sugary, so they get a little bit of a rush, and even like caffeine-based gels and stuff to give them that little bit of a sweet kind of hit, which they time to use in the last 45 minutes to half an hour of the race. All legal, of course, but you know, you can use a diet and certain products to your advantage at the back end of a race. But timing is vital, because if you get it wrong and eat too many sugary foods, you know, with 30 k's to go, you get a sugary spike and then a drop-off, and you'll hit what's called the wall. The gap now.
Three riders up front, just under a minute and a half advantage for Mondary, Brandl and Lutsenko. What? Did you? And those three riders working in good tempo. Just talking about the food, I suppose what they do say about taking in food is the best time to take in food in a bike race is usually now, because if the hammer is not down right now, it will be in a minute. And sometimes even when the hammer is down, you've just got to try and somehow get the food in, pack it into your cheeks and just try and absorb it whatever way you can.
Definitely. I mean, eating on the bike is, you need to use the down times. Of when the pressure's on, it's very difficult to eat. It's virtually impossible to eat on a climb, because you're breathing in and gulping in air in a completely different way that you would on the flat. Obviously, the increased level of effort and the required uptake of oxygen. If you try to eat a piece of cake or an energy bar, most of it's going down into your lungs as well. So it's always difficult. You think you might be riding on a climb at a steady tempo, and you think, oh, this is an opportunity to eat something, and then somebody attacks, and you then got to spit half of the energy bar out, as we see Belkov, who's about to be caught by the peloton after being distanced from his breakaway companions.
Yeah, a bit of a surprise that. We thought Maxim Belkov might have been the man. He's certainly the one with the best palmares of the six riders that launched themselves out of the peloton this morning. In fact, he was the one that kicked off the attack. But Belkov not quite able to live with the pace of the other three riders up front, and he'll drop back into the pack, and I suspect he'll drop out the back of it pretty quick as well, and he'll just be thinking about living to fight another day.
Definitely. I mean, Maxim Belkov, a very, very classy rider, took a stage of the Giro last year. So, as you said, Declan, not the rider you'd have thought who had been dropped by this group, but I think that's just down to general fatigue and the fact they've been out so long, and the fact they're probably riding, you know, we've got Milan San Remo coming up soon, which is the longest classic, but this, having looked at the race they've already had this season, is the longest ride, the longest World Tour race so far at 244, which is the distance of a lot of classics. So I'm not surprised he's blown, but and again, it's certainly good to get some miles in the legs, but very hard when you've ridden that far on the front.
Tobias Ludvigsen, the giant Shimano rider, at the back of the group, as Maxim Belkov is dragged back into the fold. Just rolling along and trying to save as much energy as he can. And just look at the contrast in effort there between the two of them. Matthias Brandl gets into a perfect aero tuck and just works his way back onto the tail of his two breakaway companions. Perhaps he went back to his car for some food and drink. Ludvigsen keeping the muscles stretched. This is a long, tough day, and these legs are really going to be aching and feeling it at the moment. So Alexei Lutsenko on the front, and accompanied by Lloyd Mondary and Matthias Brandl. These are the three riders that have been out front all day, surviving from the original six-man breakaway. Stage 4 of Tirreno-Adriatico, Indicatore in Arezzo to Cittareale, Selvarotondo. It's a long day out, longest stage of the race. They've got another doozy of a stage tomorrow to look forward to. Stage 5, Amatrice to Guardia Grille, 192 kilometers, and it finishes up the side of a wall. I mean, literally, it is over 30% the final climb in parts, average of 22%. Richie Porte of the Sky Pro Cycling team says today is probably going to be a bigger day for the GC riders. There are more hills, and that long 14-kilometre climb to the finish is going to be more critical than the shorter, sharper shock that is that Guardiagrele climb that they've got to contend with at the end of tomorrow's stage.
Yeah, tomorrow is ridiculously steep. Crucially, the riders are going to have to looking at with. Tomorrow's stage, I think Porte has said that he feels that although you could lose time tomorrow, you can lose less time because the gradient is that steep. You're not going particularly quick. You can lose a handful of seconds rather than minutes on a climb like this. That's what Richie Porte thinks. I generally tend to agree because tomorrow's climb is considerably shorter, and of course, although tomorrow's very, very long again, 190 kilometres.
No problems for one of the Tinkoff Saxo riders.
Slight Kreuziger.
Is it?
We see.
No, yes, Contador. Contador picks up a bike, and Bjorn Rees shows his concern. He's straight out of the car and leading the charge in terms of servicing his lead rider. No one came back for him. Bit of a surprise because they're on a climb. Well, just as I say it.
Paulinho waits for him.
Yeah.
Dutiful as ever.
As he has done so often in his career. He's rarely been too far from Alberto Contador's side, and that's not a huge problem for Contador. He should be back in the group very shortly, so pretty swift service there. The Tinkoff Saxo car wasn't too far back in the cavalcade, which can make a huge difference.
He looks pretty easy, Alberto, doesn't he? The way he dances on the pedals, a very distinctive climbing style, spends a lot of his time out of the saddle as opposed to sat down like a lot of other riders do. Chris Froome, for example, though the Chris Froome
What's
is in
your thinking on that? Is there does it just depend on the rider, or do you think
depends purely on the rider's style? I mean, there is a school of thought that suggests that when you're out the saddle, you're using more energy because you're using more muscle groups, you're using your back and you're using your arms. So in terms of actual efficiency, it's less efficient. But it's how comfortable you are. And clearly Alberto Contador, just by looking back at his Palmares, he rides out of the saddle very well. Remember Marco Pantani used to ride it out of the saddle, but on the drops, a very unusual climbing style. Whereas Jan Ullrich, for example, was used to ride on the drops, sat down, and hardly ever got out of the saddle. So everybody has their own unique style. Of course, Bradley Wiggins. I mean, how many times have you seen him out of the saddle? Twice? I don't know.
Yeah, ever.
But Brad sits down. But
Contador, that'll be about it.
Exactly. But one thing the riders will be thinking now as they can look ahead, we saw a couple of shots a moment ago, that beautiful vista in front of the snow-capped mountains. As beautiful as they are, there's that dark foreboding feeling in the bottom of your stomach. It's like, oh my God, I've got to actually go up that. And sometimes you'll see the road in the distance as well, snaking up the side of the mountain as if a ribbon has been dropped onto the side of a hill randomly. That's what the roads look like up there. But so a lot of these riders are going to be very, very nervous about the effort, and also nervous about what's going to happen. What are the other riders going to do? Because you often read interviews or hear interviews where riders say, I don't focus on what other riders are thinking, I just focus on myself. Of course they focus on what other riders are thinking. That's what, the nerves is about the pain that you're going to put yourself through, but also, am I going to be stronger, etc., etc. So it's interesting. Riders are now going to be thinking about, have I got enough strength in the legs? And they'll be communicating as well with their teammates, because at this crucial stage, if there is a plan that's been set out in the team meeting the previous evening or the morning, for that plan to be executed efficiently, riders need to be 100%. There's no point in going to a plan and suddenly then Quintana saying, actually, I've got really bad legs, I feel sick. Then it's like, oh my God, we're riding on the front for 50k. So there'll be constant communication between the team cars via the radio, of course, which they have in World Tour races, and his lieutenants and domestiques. So lots of talk going on to make sure that all the key players are up for the task ahead.
So you saw Tinkoff Saxo rider taking a natural break. Paulinho takes on some bottles. Contador safely back in the group. And we understand that Chris Horner is there at the moment. Just got tweet into @DQ Sport, #Eurosport Cycling, @CyclingMad1 mentioned, said Chris Horner never sits down at all on a climb. Wants to know where he is. Well, we understand that he's still in the group. We haven't heard anything to the contrary, so we've got to assume that he's there. Sitting 44th overall, 1 minute and 5 seconds in arrears, the winner of last year's Vuelta. And it took him a long time to get a contract, and it was well into January, was it? Before he picked up, Lampre Merida picked him up, and he is at least with a team now, and it'll be interesting to see whether he can come up with decent form at this race, or whether it'll appear for the likes of the Giro. But Bowles As you mentioned early on, he's got a big job to do for Amiga Pharma Quick Stop today. Part of that job, collecting bottles.
Taking a gel there. Now that's a fine art in itself. If you tear it wrong, well, that's a barb. If you tear a gel wrong, you end up squirting it all over your face, you get it all over your hands, and then you've got this sticky gel all over your hands. You're trying to change gear. It's it's not great. So you need to almost like practice that at home to see that getting a gel.
I don't know what they make
corner torn off.
Yeah, I don't know what they make that stuff of, but if it gets on your clothes or whatever, it's made of kryptonite.
I fell off once with a. We used to have back in the little cartons of energy drink, and it was a brand called Extran, very, very strong energy drink. I came off in the Tour of Denmark, and it exploded in my back pocket. Anyway, I managed to get back on. I rode to the finish, and when I took my jersey off in the hotel room, I could hold the corner of my jersey in my hand, and it stayed up like a piece of cardboard. That it's set. It was absolutely incredible. I just imagine what that did to my stomach over those few years. I don't know, but there we go. But they don't tend to use cartons anymore. That was a little bit old school. It's all gels nowadays.
As they cruise past Albaneto, the advantage of the three riders up front, it is now, have just over a minute, and Movistar continuing to set a very, very steady tempo. Steady to hard, and that's going to be difficult. Lots of riders will be feeling very, very sore legs, and well aware that the biggest test of all in this stage has yet to come. I mean, yeah, they're looking at that hill coming up and wondering if the pit in their stomach is fear and nerves, or whether it's the knock, or what the hell awaits them in the next 30 kilometers. Lloyd Mondery, Matthias Brandl, Alexei Lutsenko.
Yeah, Brandl, interesting ride, a bit of a journeyman. Spent last year with I Am Cycling, and before that 2012 was with Team NetApp, and then Geox in 2011, and Futon Cerveto, and then the Austrian team Elk House Sympion in 2009, and the other Austrian team Istat in 2008. So flitted from team to team, but a very experienced rider. Only 24, despite being in that amount of teams, turned pro very, very young. Second last year in the Poly-Normand, the Tour de Jura. 8th in GC in 2010, the Tour Langkawi, a race with climbs in. So to get in the top 10 in a race like that, you've got to be able to climb reasonably well.
Well, Movistar still drilling it on the front in Team Unison. And at the back of the group, the giant Shimano squad. At least a couple of representatives are deep in Conflab. Ludvigsen's been sitting there for a while, and Geschke, I think it might have been that he was chatting to, and those three riders up front. Inside a minute now, their advantage. Barra Harrison on Twitter into @DQ Sport, hashtag Eurosport Cycling, please. And who's your pick for the win today, he's asking. Any, want to pick one out? Matt, is it who can stop Kwiatkowski in GC, but who's actually going to end up getting the win is the question.
It's a difficult one. I'm going to tip Kwiatkowski to win today, if I'm allowed to. I just think he's riding extremely well. He can time trial well, he can sprint well, and you know, in the Volta al Garve, it's very hilly. You know, he took that by the scruff of the neck and completely dominated it. And I think riders are worried about him. And but he can ride. He doesn't have to attack. He's got a little bit of a cushion. Obviously, to second place is his own teammate, Rigoberto Urán. So Urán could even go out the road and put the other riders under pressure, because, you know, that might be a plan. It might be a plan for Urán to go. But I would suggest, given there aren't a lot of other climbers apart from Wout Poels who can climb reasonably well, that they might keep Urán close to Kwiatkowski. It might be a risk sending him up the road. And what you don't want to do, if you can help it, isolate your team leader. So although a plan B could be...
problems for Brandl, and he just about held that one up, didn't panic, and just ran a little bit wide, got it onto the dirt, but that'll have caused his heart to leap a little bit. Just gets on the gas here and thinks he's in good shape, but that one tightened up a bit more than he expected, and that, I think, is probably an indication that these guys are tired. They've been out there a long, long time, and he'd be lucky if he's escaped without a puncture. Matthias Brandl of the IAM squad just about hanging on to his bike, showing his experience, not panicking, because it would have been over the barrier there, but just about managed to keep things going. It just shows how dangerous these descents can be. But yeah, a little bit of fatigue setting in. Judgment might be quite what it was a few hours ago.
No, that certainly does happen. You know, as you get more tired, your judgment does start to go. It's easy to, especially on a descent, you know, it's very easy to relax. But he just took that a little bit wide and drifted out, and you could, I think he's lost a little bit of confidence. When that happens, as you can see, the gaps are opening now. He doesn't seem to be descending as smoothly as you would think, or you would like. It takes a little bit out of you, and the feeling in your stomach, I mean, a lot of you watching will have ridden your bike and, you know, maybe crashed, and that feeling in the pit of your stomach you get when you're just about feeling you're going to lay it down but hold it up. He'll have butterflies in his stomach now, be a little bit nervous, and that would have shocked him a little bit, because another couple of centimetres he could have been over that Arnco and down into the valley. So a little bit of a close call there, but just shows how important it is to stay focused and concentrated.
Mind you, the shot of adrenaline should get him to the next hill.
I would imagine so. I'd imagine so.
Stefano Perazzi we saw at the back of the group, the man who gave us all those thrills in the Giro d'Italia 12 months ago. Mondori, showing his descending skills, has managed to establish a bit of a gap over Lutsenko and Brandl. Lutsenko not able to descend with the same facility as his French breakaway companion.
I think
Brandl really looking like, well, he wasn't able to pick an apex to the next, to that last hairpin we saw him through. Oh, Mondori's taken a few risks, but he seems to be enjoying it, and he's forged out alone.
He certainly has. Obviously, the motos behind him indicating there is a bit of a gap to the second rider, but certainly riding well. I think what Mondori has on his side, he's 31 years of age, very, very experienced, you know, probably a very, very competent descender, although he did take that one a little bit wide, but it looks like he's riding a 52-centimetre bike there. Very, very small, low centre of gravity, quite a punchy, small rider, so he'll have that benefit as opposed to tall Ranger riders who tend to drift a little bit on the climb. So he's descending very, very well and looks very, very confident.
Missed his apex completely for that one. I mean, they don't have notes, so I mean, they haven't seen these before. They may have done, but there's no way they're going to remember them, so they're picking it out. All their judgment is based on what they see in front of them as they arrive at the corner. So that's the great skill of these pro riders, uphill and down dale.
Of course, they can use all of the road as well. Out training, you could go out training, but of course you've got to be so careful. You can't use the whole of the road because of oncoming traffic, but here they've got the beauty of just picking the best racing line. So we're looking at the racing line. By that I mean the shortest distance to take the corners, rather than riding in the middle of the road. They'll be cutting the apex.
Oh,
he's taken it. I say it's a good descender.
Mondori was pushing, and he's gone, and he just dropped the bike, and there was no way that he had enough grip to get through the corner. So Mondori just pushing too hard, and Brandl managed to just about miss. He goes left, Lutsenko goes right of Mondori's bike. And Mondori, at least he ended up in the ditch, and it'll be, as well, one would hope, as soft a landing as it was possible to get. Well, he just pushed too hard. Let's get a replay of this. Mondori was picking all sorts of crazy lines and then adjusting mid-corner. In this case, he just, no way was he going to be able to carry that sort of speed through the corner, and just ran out of road, tried to lay it down a bit further, and he's hurt his hip. He fell on his right side.
Looking at that, Declan, it was interesting the style he adopted as he banked the bike over. He had put both his knees to the top tube, and was actually, his backside wasn't pressing down on the saddle enough. And when you're in the apex of a corner, the best place for your backside to be is pressing down on the saddle, so you get proper adhesion on the back wheel. And I think it's okay, you know, lifting yourself out of the saddle on the straighter bits, but going through corners, you need to have that pressure on the back wheel, so you've got that traction going into the corner. But hopefully he'll get up, but that certainly hurt.
So let's hope that Lloyd Mondori is able to get back in the saddle, and we hope that he's on his bike. Let's wait for confirmation. Let's see whether he's... Well, the AG2R cars on the right-hand side there, waiting to assemble in behind the group, but no sign of Mondori, so I think he could well be on his way. Yeah, no sign of them tending to him there. So Mondori just about to be picked up by the bunch, and hopefully no harm done to anything other than his ego, I suppose.
Looks like it might have hurt his hand there, possibly. But yeah, lucky to have got away with a broken collarbone. But generally, when you do crash at speed, you slide unless you hit road furniture. Sometimes, bizarrely, it's the slower crashes where you've got your entire body weight hitting the ground with a lot of force. But you know, fortunate there. You've obviously got these dry stone walls on the left-hand side, and he just went into the verge and missed hitting that. So, you know, it requires a lot of skill to get down these descents safely. You know, there's lots of things that could happen. You could hit road furniture. You know, it's sometimes as a rider, it's best not to think about what could happen. It's just about focusing on a good technique down the climbs, because if you start dwelling on the bad side of you know, crashing, you know, considering you're actually riding on a couple of millimeters of tyre, and all you've got to protect you is a helmet, and you're essentially wearing lycra, which is just worthless. You know, it's interesting. So you try and put the thoughts of crashing to the back of your mind. Because of course you could puncture at speed, things like that can happen. There's a lot that could go wrong, but so yeah, you put those thoughts to the back of your mind and just focus on a good technique as you descend.
Yeah, live on pure instinct. You can think about the dangers when you're in your hotel room later that night, but don't think about it now.
Definitely.
It's going to make life more dangerous. Colin Organ is asking, should he have had his left foot at 6? Might have kept him up, so I wonder if I was suggesting that his left foot should have been right down as far as 6 o'clock. Yeah, 6 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, normally that's the. I mean, people do adopt, you know, different techniques on climbs, but there are certain, you know, textbook techniques that you could use. That, as we see, Dan Martin.
Yeah, a few people have asked whether Dan may be able to do a job today, but this is his first race this year, so I think he's just getting the miles in, riding along at the back of the group. Still a classy rider, you'd never know. He could well be able to produce something, but this is a long, long stage for your first stage race of the year. So, Lutsenko tries to accumulate a bit of information. I think he's hoping that piece of paper is going to tell him that the finish is a little bit closer than it is. Brandl and Lutsenko now still with over a minute advantage, so they're doing a very solid job indeed. I think they really could have done with Mondari's legs, because he was on a good day, to help them stay out front for a little while longer, but they're still well within touch of the bunch. We look at Michael Schär, the national champion of Switzerland, back collecting bottles, presumably, for BMC.
Of course, it's 21 kilometres to go, and when they hit 20 kilometres, there'll be no more feeding. So if there's anything that riders do need, they need to get it done within the last kilometre or so, because of course the last 20 kilometres there is no feeding at all. So last chance for the riders to get those gels, drinks back to their team leaders, to get themselves stocked up and prepared for this final climb up to the Cittariale.
So these two riders still labouring out front as we arrive with just over 20 kilometres to go in this fourth stage. Peter Kwiatkowski. Stage 4 of Tirreno-Adriatico, taking the riders to the base of the final climb of the Selva Rotonda as they make their way towards the concluding stages of this 244-kilometre slog. The Queen stage, the first of two mountain stages, and the first big rendezvous for the GC contenders in this year's Race of Two Seas. There is the Maglia Azzurra group. And the Maglia Azzurra, sitting just behind the Movistar riders, is Michał Kwiatkowski. He's got a couple of his Omega Pharma Quick-Step teammates, four indeed, in line behind him. And looks like Luke Durbridge just behind them in white, wearing the white jersey of the young rider. Of course, Kwiatkowski leads that competition ahead of Peter Sagan. Sagan in the red points jersey. You can just see him with the green helmet and the green shorts, the Cannondale rider, just being overtaken by a couple of Tinkoff Saxo riders. Stijn de Volder in the Belgian national champions jersey at the back of the group is still here, so he's got good form. Dan Martin is still here. He's been sitting at the back, but this group is not as big as it was. Stefano Perazzi they're picking out, number 21, Bardiani Valvoli. He's a big favourite in Italy as a result of his exploits in last year's Giro d'Italia, taking the Maglia Azzurra. It was there on that occasion for the leading climber. So blue jersey for leading climber in Giro d'Italia, blue jersey for leading overall in Tirreno-Adriatico.
It seems like Kwiatkowski has two teammates close at hand on his Willis poles, and behind is the distinctive figure of Rigoberto Urán with his flowing locks.
Just got a sight of Brad Wiggins there with his distinctive beard. And there was a question on Twitter into @DQ Sport, hashtag Eurosport Cycling, or send it into @RealStevens, and I'm just looking for it here. But anyway, the question was basically about Brad Wiggins. what sort of form has he got? What form can we expect from him? What could we reasonably expect from Brad Wiggins at this point of the year?
I think, interestingly enough, looking at the stage so far, he's still in the front group, and that group is thinned out. It looks like there's probably, I don't know, about 60 or 70 riders there, but Brad's riding in the front. But he's such a difficult rider to call. I mean, he could ride like this and then just suddenly swing off at the foot of the climb, as he did in the Volta a Andalucia, although he did do a fair bit of work to try and tee up Richie Porte in that race. Obviously, Valverde had other ideas and was superbly strong, but nonetheless, Brad did put in some good work in Andalucia. But it's difficult to say. I really couldn't call it at the moment, unless Sky have a plan at the moment. You know, the thing is, teams can have plans, but if another team takes it up, like Movistar, there's no need for the other teams to work. So there is an opportunity here, possibly, for Sky to go on the front and do what they do so well. But whether Brad is a part of that remains to be seen. He is so unpredictable, and I wouldn't want to call what Brad actually does today, although I know he's looking at his own individual ambitions in terms of stage racer a little bit further along in terms of the Tour of California and then hopefully the Tour de France. So, but whether he'll work for Richie here, we shall see. But I wouldn't want to call it, I really wouldn't. He's so unpredictable.
As we make our way through Santa Croce, part of the municipality of Città, which is where the finish line is today on the climb of Selva Rotonda. Città, as Matt said earlier, just 400 people live there. Small municipality in the province of Rieti, and just a stone's throw from Amarice and Mount Terminillo. They opened a local museum there a few years ago, back in 2009. The bi-millennial anniversary of Alto Lazio of Vespasian, named after the man who introduced a tax on public toilets, which is one that has fallen by the wayside.
There we go. It's up to the birthplace as well in 9 AD of Titus Flavius Vespasian, the Roman emperor. So
that's him.
Another place of cultural import.
That's Vespasian. That's the guy who came up with the tax on public toilets.
There we go.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is in the Lazio region, in the province of Rieti, for those who like their geography. 57 seconds now, under a minute, and we'll soon be on the climbs. Worth talking briefly about the climb as we're about to hit the foot slopes. It's got a total elevation of 744 metres, average gradient of 5.3%, with a maximum gradient of 10%. And importantly, for any GC contenders or people with particularly good legs, Alberto Contador being one, I think, and Nairo Quintana, is a stretch just before a kilometre to go of 10%, a real crucial part of the stage. But it does go up in steps, but the steepest part is with about a K to go, and that could be where we see guys attack. Or, you know, but there's so many contenders, you know, Contador, Evans. I mean, we haven't talked about Apino, or I don't think he's particularly on form, but where will Richie Porte attack? Will he attack, or will he just follow? And what will Kwiatkowski and Rigoberto Urán do? Very, very interesting.
Brian Travis tweeting into @DQ Sport, #Eurosport Cycling. He says it's Quintana today, Alberto to give him a run for his money. That's the expectation. Well, I wouldn't bet against that. And that is a much, much more compact group than it was. Riders have been shelled on a regular basis, as we see Paglino at the back and Stein de Volder hanging on grimly for as long as they can. We're on the final climb, 14 kilometers in total. The leading two riders up front, Brandl and Lutsenko, arrive at the final bit of pain, quite a lot of pain. Maximum percentages of 10%, 5.3% average. But as I said a little earlier, that's a little bit misleading, because there are quite a few little ramps on the way up and little level areas, but very short, give the riders a little bit of relief. But then it ramps up quite a lot. So it's rarely as little as 5% on this climb.
Yeah, the most, the easiest, steadiest part of the climb is right at the beginning. There's a 1.8 kilometre stretch, which is just very, very steady in terms of gradient before it starts kicking up, and then the climb really starts to bite. So I don't think it'll be too long before these two riders who've been very, very brave, been out in front well over 200 kilometres a day, so an absolutely epic day but it won't be long before they're snaffled up by the bunch and mercilessly spat out of the back as the climbers take control.
Requisite horses in the field shot. Those horses a little startled, I think, by the colour and the noise, and indeed, of course, the helicopters in the air as well. Of little concern to Lutsenko and Brandl. Now the bunch will have them in sight. 30 seconds just the gap for these riders. And they're going backwards in a big way, as indeed is Lloyd Mondery at the back of the group, and feeling a little bit sorry and sore for himself after that nasty little crash. But luckily he was able to jump back on his bike. Great pro that he is. And it looked the way he was looking over his shoulder there as if he's definitely going backwards. I think it's done for the day for him, and he'll wait to try and pick up a group that will take him to the finish.
Another key rider we haven't really talked much about is Julian Arredondo, a little Colombian from Trek Factory Racing, who beat Nairo Quintana on a couple of stages of St. Louis earlier in the year. He's been a bit quiet since then, but definitely a climber to watch. Pugnacious, attacking, very, very young rider, quite a fearless rider. I've noticed he's still in the group, so he could be one to watch out for too.
At the back, we get a side again of that crash for Lloyd Mondery. Landed in the ditch, but it was a heavy impact on his right thigh. Got to get the magic sponge out there to try and make sure that he makes it to the finish okay. So Mondery, his two breakaway companions still out front for now. Inside the final 12.5 kilometers for Matthias Brandl and Alexei Lutsenko, the Kazakhstani rider, as the bunch much reduced in size, wait to mop them up. 21 years old, Alexei Lutsenko, under 23 world champion in 2012. This rider is someone we'll be hearing a lot of in the future, and has made a name for himself today with this performance. Second stage of Tour de l'Ain and Tour of Bulgaria back in 2012. Not too many big results last season or so far, but certainly, as I said, showed his strength today. And Matthias Brandl, the 24-year-old Austrian, reigning Austrian time trial champion. Fourth in Tour of Luxembourg last year, second in Poly-Normand in 2013. The big pro win, he's still waiting for it, but it's definitely coming. He's got some good results in his Palmares so far.
Of course, other riders to look out for as we look at the contenders. Pozzovivo, Domenico from AG Duzar, of course Scarponi. We've got Pinot, Basso, of course. I don't think Basso will be attacking. I think he'll be more just there in the wheels. But these are the guys who we're going to be looking for. They're the team leaders. And, of course, interesting to see Cad 11's out the back earlier on, but we think he's back in this group now. And in his form, obviously a previous winner of this race back in 2011. The team's certainly looking after him. And as we said,
start back to the front, look at that.
Still at the front. And Brad riding very close to the front with Richie Porte on his wheel there. That's interesting. So maybe we are going to see Brad set a ferocious tempo, because that's one thing that Bradley Wiggins can do. Even if he's not climbing, particularly well, he can set a tempo on the earlier part of the slope, a very, very high tempo, which will start to get rid of riders very, very quickly. That's one thing he can do. And his job may be just to thin out the bunch and set a high tempo to make it very difficult for people to attack. I'm quite surprised to see Stein de Volder still there at the back, the big double Tour of Flanders winner. He was looking at his map earlier on. Brad's smiling with that beard. Clearly, potentially thinking, Declan, of the brown jersey for the beard winner. Simon Geschke, 8th yesterday in the brown jersey, but maybe Brad's thinking he wants a bit of beard action. I don't know.
So Brad Wiggins showing that he's a good team player, and he has targeted the Tour de France, participation in this year's Tour de France. He said that he doesn't want to finish it. He wants to finish his career with at least one more participation in this in that event. So I think he's showing that he is a good team player and he can do a job for Richie Porte. Who knows, he might have monster form. He could well get involved in the shake-up. Let's not rule that out either. Man of his talent and his ability and his extraordinary Palmares could well be one to look at, and people are talking about him in those terms, but well, you never know. So
Manuel Amori riding next to Peter Sagan, hanging on the back there. But yeah, Bradley Wiggins, as we said before, very unpredictable rider. You just never know.
The smartest place in the world for sorry, yeah, to interrupt, isn't it the smartest place in the world for Peter Sagan to be sitting at the back, because riders are going to start to suffer. He's going to have to start riding around riders. Cittareale the scene over this beautiful Tuscan village. As you said, the hometown of the Roman Emperor Vespasian.
Yeah, Peter Sagan, if you'd looked at the, there was a really nice side profile shot of his facial expression. He's starting to rock his shoulders back into. I don't think he's there. I don't think he particularly wants to be sat at the back. I think that's just where he is. I think he's starting to suffer as this climb starts to bite. Again, Sagan revels in the shorter, steeper climbs. But again, he's still a very young rider. You'd never know, he might mature into a rider that can contest the Grand Tours. But at the moment, I think he's in a little bit of distress. Otherwise, he certainly wouldn't be riding as last man.
Not the only one that's in distress. Hernandez really suffering to try and do a job for Quintana. I don't think he's going to last a whole lot longer. Igor Anton Hernandez. That really hurts, doesn't it? And he's just extracting the last bit of energy. But Movistar looked very, very strong indeed. Still got 3 up there, including 4, including Quintana, 3 plus.
You can tell the riders there really digging into this climb. We're not at the steepest part by any stretch now. The rider's still on the big ring there, so that indicates that we're not, you know, on a relatively low gradient.
So Sagan's gone. Peter Sagan has gone. The man is sitting 6th overall at 22 seconds, leader of the points classification. And there's your answer. Not yet a contender, really, for general classification at this level of racing. So, well, Peter Sagan, it's still been a good Tirreno-Adriatico for him after yesterday's stage. So Sagan out the back. He'll have some company heading up the hill, but he's not going to be a GC contender.
Bye.
So we're coming to the closing stages of this 4th stage of Tirreno-Adriatico, from Indicatore to Città-Reale, and we're on the final climb of Selva Rotondo with just 8.5 kilometers to go for the riders. It's been whittled down into well, still a decent sized group. It won't be this big by the top, and off the front has gone the Bardiani CSF rider Stefano Perazzi, the winner of the climbing classification of last year's Giro d'Italia, showing his climbing form, and he's got a decent advantage on the lower slopes of this Selva Rotondo climb. And now we see a bit of movement from Movistar. Looks like they've sent someone up the road, and now Kwiatkowski has moved towards the front because Movistar have unleashed their first salvo. They've set the pace, they've set the tempo, they've shelled so many riders, and now we see that they've sent someone up the road to do a job. That's Amador out the back. And we just got a close-in shot of him. I thought he was the one doing the damage.
Interesting, Stefano Perazzi, as you said, took the title of King of the Mountains in the Giro last year, but was interestingly second in the Italian Time Trial Championship. So a man who can climb very well, but also used that solo effort. So he'll be, it looks like he's riding very, very well indeed. He's opened up 26 seconds at the moment. Still a long way to go, 7.8 Ks. But although I wouldn't call him a danger man, he is somebody that you'd need to keep an eye on. You wouldn't want to let him get too far ahead there. But definitely some fireworks going off at the front, yet to identify, and it is...
Inchausti? Yeah, it is.
Inchausti.
Inchausti, and he did something like this last year on the equivalent stage, different countryside. Was up the front for quite a while, and an excellent stalking horse for the Movistar team. A man of great ability, stage winner himself in last year's Giro d'Italia, of course. Movistar had a wonderful Giro d'Italia 12 months ago. He's chasing Perazzi, and more importantly, he's putting it up to Omega Pharma Quickstep. Can they respond? Because Inchausti's just 38 seconds down overall, and definitely a contender. So he's doing a job for Quintana, doing a job for Movistar, establishing an advantage, and this is something that Omega Pharma Quickstep have to be. They have to be alive to the danger here.
Definitely, it's the rider that we thought might be there. Uran is sat in front of his, or just behind Kwiatkowski, but it's Wout Poels, the rangy Dutchman, who's setting quite a nice tempo, and it looks like he's bringing Inchausti back. He's closing that gap and making sure he doesn't get too far ahead, because Inchausti, a prodigiously talented climber. Now, there's a plan from Movistar to tee it up. Now all Quintana needs to do is follow the wheels. He doesn't need to attack at all, and if they do bring him back, it might be that he counters. But this is an absolute textbook display of tactical riding by Movistar at the moment, putting the pressure on Omega Pharma Quickstep.
Quintana's 38 seconds down overall, same time difference that Inchausti has to Kwiatkowski at the head of the overall standings. Where is the best point on this climb, would you think, for Quintana to launch his attack? Or put another way, at what point does Inchausti still need to be in the lead?
I mean, you often see, you know, teams fire a rider off the road, and you assume sometimes that another rider who's going to counter-attack will wait till that rider's brought back. It could be that Quintana uses Inchausti a little bit later on up the road, but the part of the road that Quintana needs to attack on is one of the steeper gradients, because that's where he has most of an advantage. He's got that explosive attack, very, very light, and I think, as well as putting, as we see, sorry,
Tinkoff-Saxo have gone.
Tinkoff-Saxo attacking.
Or is it?
Looks like Kreuziger.
Kreuziger. Roman Kreuziger certainly is 44 seconds in arrears, sitting 18th overall at the moment. And Roman Kreuziger, a very, very strong general classification contender in the Grand Tours. And a wonderful card for Tinkoff-Saxo to play. And I tell you what, this is a great piece of racing, because the team time trial at the start of this race has presented us with a very interesting mountain stage, because I think if they were all within a second or two overall, they'd wait until the closing stages of this climb. But Kreuziger very, very quickly up to Inchausti, so Inchausti will try and grab onto the wheel, and those two riders also making inroads into Perazzi up front, just that green dot in the distance. It's not too far up to him, but they're just about hanging on in front of the bunch, so it looks as if Wout Poels is doing a really solid job in keeping these riders at least in sight. But this is still a danger moment for Kwiatkowski. A
very dangerous thing to do. It's a really good, talented duo that's just about to bridge across to Perazzi. And if these three get working, it could spell a little bit of danger. But again, it's all about putting Amiga Pharma Quick-Step under pressure, and that's what Tinkoff and Mobistar have both done. But of course, how long can Wout Poels chase? Then it's going to be down to Rigoberto Urán to chase, and then that's when Kwiatkowski would become exposed. It's all about exposing Kwiatkowski, putting Amiga Pharma Quick-Step, who haven't got a lot of riders in numbers, but Wout Poels at the moment is riding very, very strongly. The gap hasn't opened out too long, but Wout Poels, of course, is a good climber, but he's not a pure climber. It's just how long can he keep riding, but he's certainly setting a good tempo now as more and more riders go at the back, but there's still around 30-35 riders. 6 kilometres to go for the leading trio now, as Kreuziger really piles on the pressure at the front on this flatter part of the course.
We hope to get the gap as soon as possible. Perazzi is joined by Kreuziger and Inchausti, and of the three, it looks as if Kreuziger is the strongest. Very quickly up onto the wheel of Inchausti, and the two of those quickly join Perazzi at the front, and this is starting to cause a little bit of havoc at the back of the group as riders are shelled in ones and twos. Those three riders up front. Kreuziger, of course, 5th in last year's Tour de France, former winner of Tour of Switzerland. Has he got the form to hang on out front for long enough to at least provide the perfect launching pad for Contador? So too Inchausti will be hoping that he can do a decent job and really present Nairo Quintana, sitting in 4th place in the line there. Just on his wheel is Rigoberto Urán, 2nd overall. And Kwiatkowski 2nd in line in the bunch, just behind his teammate Wout Poels. Kreuziger steals a little look behind, and Inchausti's not enjoying this pace. I don't think Perazzi's enjoying it either. It's Kreuziger that's doing the work.
Kreuziger turning a huge gear there, really applying the pressure, but what a fantastic ride by Wout Poels here. A man of the flatlands, turning his hand to setting a fantastic tempo here for his leader. Kwiatkowski sat comfortably on his wheel, but Kreuziger turning a huge gear now, really trying to blow the race apart and to tee up his leader, Contador.
De Valder's still there.
That is a surprise.
Luke Durbridge. Great run. I think, was it Clark or Impey? It was one of the Orica riders who's sitting well up the group as well. So still some riders that wouldn't ordinarily ride for GC have been presented with an opportunity to see what they can manage to extract from this race.
I think so far the climb has been very, very fast. In a few moments, the road does kick up. The gradient goes up to an average of 6.4% for a couple of kilometres. That's maybe where we'll see more damage being done. And I think the group is quite big because it's been quite a high tempo. These guys are still riding on the big ring here. As
Kreuziger's leaving the other two. Perazzi realises the danger and he jumps immediately around Inchausti. Inchausti doesn't quite have the form. He's done a decent job, I think, for setting up Quintana, but just doesn't have the leg. Little flick of the elbows, expecting the motorbike to come around him, I think, as Inchausti has blown a gasket. Kreuziger's pace is relentless, and very shortly Inchausti will be back into the group. Simon Clarke it is indeed that's sitting 4th in line.
Great ride by Simon Clarke, a fantastic finish for him yesterday, and of course rode really well in the World Championships last year where he finished 7th on a very demanding course. But Kreuziger now, he's finally still on the big ring. That just shows how fast this guy is going and how much form he's got. He's opened up a relatively significant gap now as Perazzi fights to hold his wheel.
Oh, Perazzi is not enjoying this. This is not the sort of tempo that he was thinking of setting, and they are drawing clear of this group. So these are danger moments now for Kwiatkowski. Simon Clarke, as we mentioned, he's 13 seconds behind overall, sitting in 3rd position, sitting 4th in line in the bunch, looking very comfortable at the moment. Inchausti is going backwards.
This is where the road steepens a bit now. Notice the rides are going noticeably slower, but Kreuziger absolutely flying at the moment. That gap is opening up, but it's still Wout Poels setting the tempo at the front. But the bunch is still relatively large, and that shows that that tempo isn't quite fast enough. Be interesting to see if any other riders decide to counter. And Poels is still riding. He's been in the front now for 2 or 3 kilometres, but still a lot of contenders there. Quintana looking very, very easy. Kwiatkowski looking comfortable. Simon Clarke turning a nice gear there, looking very, very comfortable indeed as we head back to the 2 leaders. 26 seconds now.
26 seconds. This is bringing Kreuziger very much back into general classification contention. Remember, just 38 seconds in arrears starting today's stage as he looks to move up the block. That indicates that the gradient has just got that little bit tougher, but he's still on the big ring. This is immense, I can tell you. I'd be on the small ring going up there, so would almost all of the rest of the planet, but not Kreuziger. 25 seconds advantage for the 2 riders up front as we come to the closing stages of this 4th stage of Tirreno-Adriatico, with Roman Kreuziger really shoveling the coal in at the moment. Stefano Perazzi has cracked. He was suffering there for so long. Look at this, he just eases off for a couple of seconds, and then his motivation is immense. Perazzi really is he's a great rider to watch because he looks as if he's cracked. He's gone onto the small ring, but still Kreuziger perseveres on the big ring, albeit he's up towards the top of the block now. And now riders slipping back towards the back of the group. Stan de Volder in the Belgian national champions jersey, as we see on the back of Ludvigsen.
Wout Poels still tapping out a rhythm. Inchausti is now caught back. I think he's completely spent. He's dropping back down. He's going to be... What he needs now is to try and take a bit of a breath. All he needs is one of these false flats to try and recompose himself. And finally, Perazzi has given up. Well, not given up, but he's just under the impetus of the pressure applied on the front by Kreuziger. The gap now 28 seconds. Kreuziger riding supremely strong, still on the big ring. How impressive is this? Opened up a noticeable gap.
27-year-old Czech piling on the pressure, and now almost half a minute, so he's getting very close to the situation where he'd be virtual jersey on the road. And could he sustain this all the way to the finish, because we're within 5 kilometers of the finish, 3.3 kilometers, and this is probably the getting on for the toughest part of the climb. Once they come to about well, the last kilometer is a real doozy though. Little bits of 10%, and amazingly Wout Poels is still doing this turn on the front. Savage job that he's doing for Kwiatkowski. Kwiatkowski looking relatively comfortable. Rigoberto Urán sitting a few riders behind him. A sense perhaps that Poels isn't really able to generate the power necessary, because riders starting to crowd around him a little bit. That group's starting to fan out, and I think some of the other GC contenders and perhaps some of the opportunists looking for an opportunity to attack.
So Richie Porte moving up the outside. He's still there in contention. The gap dropped under 30 seconds, now 26 seconds. Kreuziger, of course, the winner, 10-second time bonus as well, 6 seconds for second, 4 seconds for 3rd place. So that's absolutely crucial. And it is at that time now where Kreuziger could be looking at being the jersey or the leader on the road. He's just going to be focusing on going as hard as he can now as the road starts to steepen.
Well, he's jersey on the road right now, and it's wavering because, as you say, that 10 seconds bonus, mind you, it remains to be seen what Kwiatkowski gets. 6 and 4 seconds, 10, 6 and 4 across the line for the first 3 finishers. Those are the time bonuses on offer. Perazzi is a spent force, dropping back into the group. He'll try and hang on for as long as he can. He'll be mopped up by the group any second now, and I don't think he wants to even think about it. 18 seconds now, the time gap. Is that between Perazzi or between Kreuziger?
I think it certainly looks like it's more than 18. It looks like it's the gap to Perazzi. Just looking at the stretch of road there. Perazzi's on the false flat. It looks like Kreuziger's hitting the steeper part of the climb. There's a section now of average 1 in 10 or 10% up to the last kilometre. So this is the steepest, the hardest part of the climb now. And it looks like Perazzi's days are numbered. And it's still amazingly Wout Poels tapping out a good rhythm on the front.
Well, the question is, I mean, if Kreuziger hangs on to very, very close to the finish, I mean, is anyone else going to attack? And I think we're going to start to see the attacks now. Richie Porte looks to respond to this one.
Fantastic attack with the BMC rider, who will identify in a moment. Certainly not Cadel Evans, who was distanced earlier on, but the bunch now really strung out.
Is it?
Richie Porte holding the wheel there, 27 seconds to lead. This is the part of the course, if anybody wants to cause any damage, this is the place to do it, where the gradient, it's 1 in 10, 10%, and incredibly, Kreuziger still riding on the big ring. Glances over his shoulder to check the gap, which is 24 seconds.
And now Trek looking to get involved, and that is it Kieselowski perhaps? Yeah, Kieselowski has gone for one, and he's looking to see is anyone going to join him.
These aren't the riders we'd thought to be attacking. The main GC contenders are going to
Kangert, Grivko is capable of something decent. I don't think it's Scarponi from Astana, is it?
It certainly doesn't look like the Scarlo Scarponi. We shall soon see. We can get closer in, but some real action here. The gap now down under the impetus of these counter-attacks to 17 seconds with 2Ks to go.
It is Scarponi, I think, you know.
Oh.
So, chasing group, it looks like Scarponi is going. Former winner of this race back in 2009. Kreuziger's hanging on, 18-second advantage over Kwiatkowski, and very much into a general classification contention is Kreuziger. Will he be caught before the finish? Still 2 kilometers to go. Lots of racing left for these riders. They're in a world of hurt at the moment, and Kreuziger is not enjoying it. Still on the big ring, though. So really grinding out incredible power, and he's got such low cadence that you think he's not making any progress at all. But I tell you, he's absolutely flying up this hill.
He's flying. I mean, obviously, remember, these guys have now been racing for over 230 kilometers, so sometimes it's just about not pedaling, as we see Quintana with Alberto Contador on his wheel, bridged across with consummate ease to the lead to Scarponi, glances over his shoulder to see who's joined him, and it's the 2 main climbers of the race, the two of the finest climbers in the world.
Crisis moment now for the race leader Kwiatkowski, because he's not in this group before, and I was wondering whether Alberto Contador could stand it, so he was waiting for someone else to attack. Quintana did the job for him. They immediately move up to Kieselowski and Scarponi, and I think they're going to leave them behind, or will they work together? This climb moves up in a series of ramps, so we're going to see the riders pedaling a relatively easy cadence, and then again it'll ramp up. We're going to see that regularly now inside the last 2 kilometers. Up front, Kreuziger, though, has definitely hit one of those tough ramps, and there's a definite, decent amount of daylight between these 4 riders and Kwiatkowski behind. So is he going to be able to get a dig out from Rigoberto Urán? Is there anyone going to be able to help Kwiatkowski? 4th in this race 1 year ago, and on absolutely monster form at the moment, but the jury's still out on whether Kwiatkowski is a rider for the big stage races. Certainly he's great on the one-day races, but still at just 23 years of age. And the attack comes from Quintana. Contador immediately responds. Scarponi looks like he's equal to that challenge, but that's not the last attack we're going to see from Nairo Quintana in this stage.
Of course, Contador doesn't have to chase. All he's got to do is follow, and it looks like Kreuziger getting all sorts of distress here.
I think Kreuziger is waiting for Contador. I think he might have got the instruction that Alberto's coming up from behind, so why not wait and work them over together, because 2 against 3 is definitely a big advantage.
Very strange tactics here from Contador, looking over his shoulder. He could go here. They've actually put a gap between themselves and the Azura jersey of Kwiatkowski. It's Richie Porte bridging across the gap. Clearly Kwiatkowski in distress here, isolated now, no teammates with him. He has got to react to this, or the race is over for him. He needs to close that gap now.
Superb work being done by Kwiatkowski. He's just about managed to winch himself back on. Kreuziger looks around to see what's happening. Scarponi says, I'm not waiting for any more tactical stuff. I'm getting out of here. Kreuziger sits on his wheel, and it's Richie Porte that's going to try and close the gap to these two leaders as they go under the kite. We're inside the final kilometre of this fourth stage of Tirreno-Adriatico, and it's really brewing up nicely as they head towards the line.
They're playing cat and mouse here. Richie Porte on the front again, looking at trying to break this group up. The gradient still very, very skipper. Scarponi drives away, Kreuziger on his wheel, and the little diminutive Tasmanian brings the group together with nearly only 500 metres to go.
Pozzovivo's joined this group as well. And Kwiatkowski is really, really suffering. A little bit of a gap there. Nero Quintana immediately draws clear of him, and Kwiatkowski is in a world of hurt as Rigoberto Urán looks like he's really struggling as well. So the man sitting second overall doesn't quite have the legs. The Colombian rider moved across to Omega Pharma Quick Step this year from the Sky Pro cycling squad, and it doesn't look like he's quite on the same form that we saw from him in the Giro d'Italia. But Richie Porte, who moved across to this race from Paris-Nice, well, is showing why Sky thought that he could be a man for GC by really putting it up to the other riders. The two Tinko Saxo riders of Kreuziger and Alberto Contador suffering in his wheel, but none suffering more than Mikhail Kwiatkowski, because, well, just about manages to drag himself back onto the wheel of Scarponi. But for how much longer can he resist these attacks?
It was interesting that the lull in the action, there was an opportunity there for the GC contenders to put some daylight between them and Kwiatkowski, who was clearly suffering, but Porte got the bit between his teeth, accelerating away. Can Contador shut the gap?
Porte is gone. Porte has managed to open up the gap to Alberto Contador. Quintana is equal to the challenge put down by Richie Porte, so I think he might well be in trouble here. The man from Sky looks over his shoulder, and, well, he won't be happy to see that. But Kwiatkowski has cracked a little bit, and there's a definite gap, so they need to ride all the way to the line. Forget just about the 10-second bonus. I think they need to maximize the advantage. Kwiatkowski is managing to drag himself somehow, some way back to these riders who are definitely more adroit and of greater skill and agility on these climbs. But Kwiatkowski is showing fantastic fight and going for the line. Richie Porte, the attack comes from Alberto Contador. Nero Quintana immediately onto his wheel, but Contador goes for the line at the end of stage 4 and opens up that advantage. 2, 3, 4 bike lengths for Alberto Contador as he goes inside the final 50 metres. No one's going to deny him now, and it's Alberto Contador that is going to take the stage and the 10-second bonus. Nero Quintana of Movistar in second position, and further back, well, Kwiatkowski desperately trying to limit the damage, and it looks as if he's limited it with great facility. Superb performance from the race leader. He's going to hang on to that jersey, there's no doubt about that, but with a reduced margin over Alberto Contador and Nero Quintana. They didn't manage to distance him by the amount that they needed to. They'll have another opportunity tomorrow, but superb performance, superb stage, and stage honours going to Alberto Contador.
Fantastic win by Alberto Contador, being congratulated by his teammates. But I think that there was an opportunity there that was missed. Kwiatkowski was in distress on the steepest part of the climb, and there was a lot of hesitation, a lot of cat and mouse going on between the main GC contenders, and they missed a trick there. But Alberto Contador timed that sprint to perfection. Quintana couldn't respond. Richie Porte's option was to go early, but it wasn't quite enough. But the multiple Tour stage winner took a decisive stage there, but I think he could have got more, but he's going to be happy with the stage win there today.
Ivan Basso, part of a group coming in. A little bit further back than he would like, but over a minute down on the leading contenders. And that was interesting, wasn't it? Just that moment where we had 4 riders were clear of Kwiatkowski, and quite a bit of daylight between them. They hit that little level section, and instead of powering on and going down the block and really going for the big gears, they all looked at each other. Scarponi went to go, didn't have the legs for it, and of course the attack started again. But so often we've seen that they will let riders back in. Richie Porte, I think, will probably be quite relieved about that fact too.
Yeah, they're almost as if they're waiting for a sprint and not interested in the time gap. But when Roman Kreuziger looked over his shoulder a few hundred metres before this, as we see the last few hundred metres, and this, although the legs are hurting, that's tactical. I mean, they're not riding full gas, and Richie Porte realises it, he senses it, so he's gone to the front. The best way for him to ride hard is to go long, and he's tried to go there, but Contador, with that dramatic acceleration that not even Quintana, who was on a couple of gears lower, couldn't shut that gap. A good stage win there from Alberto Contador, but I think when he reflects on the footage, perhaps he'll be pleased with the stage win, but I think he could have got more out of today by going earlier and using the advantage that Tinkoff Saxo had with having an immensely strong Roman Kreuziger up the road, but that'll be for the team meeting a little bit later.
Hands, fists clenched, hands in the air for Alberto Contador, and he's delighted with that stage win.
Molti stravolgimenti e dunque la vittoria oggi sorride all'uomo che ha vinto tutti i tre grandi giri, cioè Vuelta di Spagna, Giro d'Italia e Tour de France. Contador che ha lo sprint con il suo classico segno, quello del pistolero, è andato a sparare il colpo.
Alberto Contador takes
Dunque si candida come uno dei possibili probabili vincitori di questa edizione 2014.
Alberto Contador takes stage 4 of Tirreno-Adriatico. He said that this is an important objective for him. He was asked the question, is this just training for big Grand Tours to come? No. Stage results, 1 second advantage for Alberto Contador ahead of Nairo Quintana. Moreno gets up for third, the Katusha rider. Appeared from nowhere in the conclusion stages. Good result for Kreuziger. Richie Porte has to make do with fifth. Scarponi, super performance from him. Kwiatkowski, well, great effort. Loses 10 seconds, plus the 10 seconds bonus to Alberto Contador. Kieselowski, good solid effort from him.
Interesting to see 42-year-old American Vuelta a España winner Chris Horner in the top 10 there, so a stealthy ride by the American veteran in the Lampre colours. As you see, Moreno cross the line, followed by Kreuziger, Porte, Scarponi, and a struggling Kwiatkowski, but he still keeps the jersey, but it tees it up tomorrow for a very exciting stage.
Well, by my reckoning, there's 20 seconds now. Here's the overall standing. Sorry, 16 seconds. Yeah, 20 seconds gained by Alberto Contador. 16 seconds in arrears. Nairo Quintana moves to third position. And they are the serious GC contenders, have emerged at the top of the general classification. Kwiatkowski survives for another day in blue. And he's got another difficult challenge on the roads to Guardia Grele tomorrow. So the scene over at Città Reale as we get a full rundown of the top 10 of the overall standings, with Kwiatkowski now the 16-second advantage over Alberto Contador. Quintana 23 seconds behind. Richie Porte is into it. Rigoberto Urán, Kreuziger, Kieselowski, Moreno Moser sitting 8th overall. A great run by the Cannondale rider. And Nieva and Arredondo. We look forward to the 5th stage of Tirreno-Adriatico. Great stage success for Alberto Contador. Rigoberto Urán will be a little bit disappointed, I think, by his performance on this stage. He'll be thinking more, I think, about stage races to come. Contador, though, has a little look over the right shoulder, a little look over the left shoulder, and dances his way to victory on stage 4 of Tirreno-Adriatico. Nothing that Nairo Quintana can do. He has a little look down at his stem, and you know that by bowing his head in defeat. Still, though, very, very much in contention for overall honours. Just 23 seconds back, and they've got to go up a wall at the finish tomorrow. It's likely that there could be a reasonable sized group that arrive at that finish. It's a very, very short climb, but it's very, very steep, so there aren't going to be huge gaps gained, but a few seconds here plus a bonus. Well, and Kwiatkowski could find himself very much in trouble and struggling to hang on for his lead in this race. And I tell you what, he'd be very, very grateful to a very strong performance by his Amiga Pharma Quick-Step team in that team time trial that opened this race. And remember, of course, Matt, they've got the time trial to conclude this event on Tuesday. It's a short time trial, but a few seconds here or there could make all the difference.
This race is still wide open. The last couple of days are going to be very, very, very exciting indeed. Of course, the possibility tomorrow that Contador or even Quintana or even Richie Porte on that final climb, that ridiculously steep climb to the finish, could take it. And of course, we have that time trial on Monday, as you say, as we look back to the early events of the day, the very early attacks. But yeah, this race still all to play for.
Maxime Belkov it was that kicked off the early attack of the day. 6 riders up front, then became 3. Mark Cavendish not enjoying the hills. Well, I suppose he'll enjoy them on some level. Enjoy the sunshine, enjoy the fact that he's close to his home, his Italian home. Kwiatkowski got the food in, but didn't quite have enough breakfast at the end up. Still wonderful resistance, and Contador, who ends up with a stage win. We'd forgotten that he did have a little bit of puncture difficulty, but really of little concern. He was very, very soon back in the group, and didn't cost him too much energy. Great effort by the Movistar team. Ultimately, it resulted in second, but remember this moment for Lloyd Mondery. Well, he's not going to forget it too quickly. Just pushing a bit hard. He'll be feeling a bit sore tonight. I think he'll have a bath rather than a shower tonight. Brad Wiggins found wanting in the final climb, but he'd be happy to get the miles in. Peter Sagan no longer an overall contender in this race, but has a wonderful stage success. The Movistar team, as I said, didn't manage to come up with the win that they'd hoped for, but they have propelled Nairo Quintana into decent position. Stefano Perazzi of the small Bardiani team, always on the attack, coming up with a great result. Kreuziger, though, great card to play for the Tinkoff Saxo team.
Definitely really teed it up today, showed immense strength. On a personal level, he's going to be very, very pleased with the way he was going. But this was the key part of the race. That, to me, is a clear signal. I'm waiting for you. So Contador could have taken up the slack there and opened up even more considerable a gap. And the way Contador was going, he could have, you know, I think he could have won the stage and been in the jersey today. So I think they missed a trick there. It almost looks that they were more concerned on trying to go for the stage win rather than the overall, because Kwiatkowski was clearly in quite a lot of distress, and had they continued to apply the pressure when they distanced him in the first instance, we could have seen a slightly different general classification, because this race now is going to go down to the wire, and Contador still has it all to do.
Yep, still it's going to be a major challenge for Alberto Contador to close that 16-second advantage that Michał Kwiatkowski has retained after his wonderful rear guard action. 7th on the stage for Kwiatkowski, as we see him head bowed and desperately hanging on. Got sight behind, just behind Kwiatkowski in the background of Chris Horner. Good effort from him at 42 years of age, as you say, but the pistol salute came from Alberto Contador.
Alberto's stage win in Algarve. Here, there are some very, very good riders, more so than that race. So how important was the victory on the stage here for your confidence this year?
Pues es realmente importante, todas las victorias son importantes. Más en una carrera como la Tirreno-Adriatico, con un final en alto. Es una pena que no era excesivamente duro, pegaba muchísimo viento en contra y no se podían hacer grandes diferencias. Bueno, contento por la victoria parcial, pero pensando un poco en la clasificación general, está muy difícil.
Well, I think what we can take from that is that he's very, very content, very, very happy with brilliant individual performance, wonderful team performance as well.
Yeah, Contador said before the race that this was a target for him, and he was a little bit critical of the press, saying it was written off, and even at his age he still thinks that some of his best years to come. He said he's had a very, very good winter and he's feeling as strong as ever, and he still thinks that he can get back to the days when he was winning Grand Tours. And by a display, you know, of this nature, who could? It appeared to me that Contador had a little bit in the tank there. You know, I won't dwell on the fact I think they could have, gone a little bit harder and opened the gap. But clearly, Contador on form. So here we go to the leader, Kwiatkowski.
Yeah. Well, great performance from Kwiatkowski.
You were expecting attacks from Quintana and Contador today. They came, but you defended well. But it looks tough towards the end of the climb.
Yeah, that was pretty hard, you know. I had so much support from Wout Poels and Rigoberto, who ran on the last climb. They really was pushing hard, and I'm actually happy that I didn't lose so much time. And you know, I expect so big attacks, and they went really. So congrats to Alberto.
17 seconds the gap between you and Alberto on the GC now. Is that enough going into the next stages?
I don't know if it's enough. I think there's another stage who tomorrow, when they they actually can gain some time on me. So I expect another big attacks tomorrow. So we will see what's going to happen, but I'm stay focused and motivated for tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Michal.
Thank you.
Well, Michal doesn't show a whole lot of emotion. He's quietly spoken, a little demure, just 23 years of age, remember? But very quick to pay tribute to Wout Poels. Absolutely monster turn from him. Rigoberto Urán obviously did a job from as well. And that's the advantage that he currently has. 16 seconds, Quintana's there. Richie Porte, 34 seconds. Getting a bit scary for him at 34 seconds. Remember, he does have the time trial on Tuesday. Rigoberto Urán still right there. And Roman Kreuziger is there or thereabouts. Keselowski, Moser, Nieva and Arredondo. Quick reminder, we've got live cycling coming up after this. What's live now on British Eurosport 2, Stage 7 of Paris-Nice. Rob and Sean will take you through that. It's also a very, very exciting race and boiling up nicely today. And we're back tomorrow with live coverage of Stage 5 of Tirreno-Adriatico. Amatrice to Guardia Grele, and that is an absolute wall of a climb at the end of that. So that's going to be pretty exciting as we wait for the presentation to Alberto Contador of the flowers, the champagne. So Alberto Contador accepts the plaudits of the crowd after taking victory on Stage 4 of Tirreno-Adriatico, his second victory of the season, and now in overall contention for this stage race. Showing a little bit of his old form. And who would bet against him? Il Pistolero. 1 second advantage over Nairo Quintana.
L'applauso per il portacolori della team Saxo, Alberto Contador.
And Contador, did you see a little bit of the old fire in his belly there?
Definitely. I mean, even if you put this race to one side for a moment, what it does, the thought of Contador carrying this form through to the Tour de France, for example, what a wonderful proposition. Chris Froome could have some serious opposition if Contador gets back to the form of old. But yeah, I'm pleased with Contador. A very, very good display there. But again, he did seem to have a little bit in the tank, and I think he's going to obviously try and take more time tomorrow. But I think he could have taken a little bit more time today. But, Contador looking very, very strong. You could notice in the last 200 metres when Contador went, he had a bit more in the tank. He was using at least 2 or 3 sprockets more than Quintana. He was leaning on the gear. Quintana, obviously a real pure climber, spinning a lower gear, but didn't have the same power that Contador had when he went and couldn't respond to it. So Contador clearly, I think he's got more in the tank, supremely confident, and arguably back to the days when he was at his strongest.
So what does Kwiatkowski need going into the time trial, do you think? Just 9.5 kilometers. It's a very short test.
Well, Kwiatkowski beat Contador in the Vuelta al Garve. I mean, Kwiatkowski beat his teammate Tony Martin in the time trial in the Vuelta al Garve as well. So, and his top 10 in a couple of the time trials in the Tour de France, as we've seen on the podium.
So Michal Kwiatkowski dons the maglia azzurra of overall race leader in Tirreno-Adriatico for a second successive day. Will he still have it on Monday? That's the question. Regardless of his inability to come up with stage success today, he showed his wonderful resilience and his fabulous form. Nobody thinks of Kwiatkowski at this stage in his career as being a man for the big climbs. But he showed great power, and great fortitude in finishing 7th over the line. And Kwiatkowski needs a little bit of practice on uncorking the champagne. He seems to be getting the hang of it. Actually, that's champagne.
Well, he has just done 244 kilometres, so he's entitled to be a bit tired.
Is he entitled to drink it, though? That's the question. Will he wait till Tuesday night?
I think Kwiatkowski today in that display, keeping hold of the jersey, he rode with a lot of maturity as well. I mean, it was fantastic to see Wout Poels riding so strongly. That's obviously played into his hands. You need the strength of your teammates, but of course he didn't panic. Yeah. It's very easy when riders of the caliber of Quintana and Contador attack. But what you can do, it's easy when you're very young to go with those attacks and put yourself into the red, but he didn't. He hung back and he basically rode a very steady, even tempo rather than trying to attack, you know, with the same power of Scarponi and Richie Porte. So he rode a very canny race, but I think that these riders here that we, you know, did miss a little bit of a trick, but fair play to Kwiatkowski. He rode determinedly and doggedly and limited his losses, and he's still in the game because he's a very, very talented time trialist, especially over the flatter courses. So I think it was a head-to-head between Contador, Quintana, Porte and Kwiatkowski in a time trial, a flat one. At the moment, on current form and looking on last year, I'd say that Kwiatkowski's still in a very, very strong place.
And Richie Porte satisfied with his form and looking to the Giro d'Italia?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, Porte today, he was attacked a couple of times in the last few hundred metres and put distance between himself and some very, very good riders. Didn't have enough at the end to put away, as we see, Peter Sagan taking the points jersey.
So Peter Sagan didn't quite have it to stay with the leading contenders on the final climb, but he dons the points jersey once more. Now with a slightly reduced advantage, just 4 points between himself and Kwiatkowski at the top of the points standings. Peter Sagan will have another opportunity to add to his total on the sprinter stage, the final sprinter stage on Monday, and might be interested indeed in that final time trial on Tuesday. Not quite the big, broad, beaming smile that we got from him in yesterday's, after yesterday's stage, which he dedicated to his mother. Hasn't been well recently. I think he was thrilled to be able to dedicate that to her. There's the full points standings as they stand at the moment. Peter Sagan with a 4-point advantage at the top of the points standings from Michał Kwiatkowski. 2 points further in arrears, Alberto Contador, Matteo Pellucchi took that great second stage, sitting fourth at the moment. Andre Greipel has been up on a regular basis, wasn't involved today, sitting fifth. Brandl, after his heroics in the sprint, has vaulted into the top 10. As the riders are still making their way in, 20 minutes down, and they won't be the last riders across the line, I can tell you, after a 244-kilometer stage. Michał Kwiatkowski mounts the podium once more and is presented to the crowd as the leader of the young riders classification, now with a healthy advantage, a very, very healthy advantage indeed. Nero Quintana, we forget, of course, that he's also such a young man. Moreno Moser, we haven't really mentioned or given him credit for what was a great ride today.
Yeah, only a minute down from Moreno Moser. Big hope for the Italians. I think Kwiatkowski's going to be now focusing on getting back to that team hotel, getting a massage and a rub.
Let's hear from Peter Sagan. Not really his day.
Warm drinks inside. And Peter Sagan, how was your day today? You looked relaxed coming up the last climb.
Yeah, it was good, I think. Yeah, before the last climb, it was very hard climb, and yeah, the group is dropped for too many groups, and then yeah, I return on the front in the last descent, and then the last climb I did just easy.
Okay, we'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Peter Sagan's pretty relaxed about things, not too concerned, wasn't able to stay with him, so took it easy as he made his way to the up the final climb. He lived to fight another day. And we'll be on at 1:30 tomorrow for the 5th stage of the Tirreno-Adriatico. It's a doozy. Amatrice to Guardia Grele. Marco Canola leads the overall climbing standings. Bardiani Valvoli rider has a very healthy advantage. It's going to be tough for anyone to get to him. Lutsenko's added to his total. Tekla Hamanot still there, but it's all about Canola in that competition. But quick reminder, you can catch the boys over on British Eurosport 2 on Paris-Nice. We'll be back for stage 5 tomorrow afternoon. Please do join us for then. From myself and Matt, from today, it's goodbye.